Alright, my name's Amy, and for the Team Literature Circle discussion, I read The Watsons Go to Birmingham, 1963. The book starts with the main character is this kid who's about 11 years old. He is in Flint, Michigan with his family, and he has an older brother who is 13 and a younger sister, and it kind of just talks about like their school life and like, you know, bullies and how the kids get along with each other, and then the parents. He has few friends, and it talks a lot about you know, how this kid Kenny sees his older brother acting. He's definitely a teenager, kind of acts like a punk kid. Um, and his parents are always telling this, you know, older brother, Byron, that, you know, if he doesn't shape up, they're really going to have to do some drastic measures, take some drastic measures, you know, to get him to act better. And all of a sudden, you know, after a few incidents that this older brother has, the parents start getting this car of theirs, like, fit for the road, putting a lot of money into it, and ultimately they announce that they are going to Alabama to drop off the older brother at the grandma's house, because they think that the slower pace of life in Birmingham, as well as, you know, the strictness, I guess, of the grandma, is going to help him, you know, act better, or, you know, I don't know, maybe she'll know what to do with him, but basically he's just being a really bad influence on the younger two kids, and the parents are tired of it. So they pile in the car. It's 1963. They go to Birmingham, Alabama. They meet Grandma Sands. Grandma Sands' special friend, Mr. Roberts, I believe his name was. Not a big character. So they hang out. It's apparently really hot and horrible in Alabama. It's summer. While they're in Alabama, the plan is to leave Byron there for the rest of the summer, and if he doesn't start acting better, they're going to leave him there for the whole school year. So they get there, and things are going well. The kids go out one day to like wander around. The main character has this horrible incident where, despite being warned, he goes over to this Collier's Landing, and ends up getting in the water and getting sucked down into this whirlpool, and the older brother saves him. While they are there in Birmingham, the church is bombed. His grandmother's church is bombed, and there is some concern that his youngest sister was in the church at the time of the bombing. Turns out not to be the case. They leave Birmingham the same night of the bombing to, you know, get out of there. They don't tell the young little girl what has happened, and they go back to Flint the same night. When they get back, main character Kenny's pretty bummed, just dealing with a lot of things that he saw, and you know, his feelings that stem from what he saw. I took a lot of notes, and they're ridiculously color-coded. Oh, you can't really see. Oh yeah, there's some highlighter. So it's a timeline. It's kind of like, you know, just summary of what all happens in the book. Mostly throughout the book, you don't really see a lot of, like, it doesn't really talk a lot about physical development of the kids. It's kind of nice, the three different ages of the kids, just because you kind of get to see different stages of development, and it also kind of resonated with me because I am the oldest of three kids, and you could definitely see, you know, development issues in all three of us, and it was just interesting to watch. And it's interesting that this kid, Kenny, the main character, the middle child, points out a lot of these things that he sees going on in his brother. Like I said, you don't see a lot about physical development, other than he briefly mentions that his older brother Byron has grown a chin hair at the very end of the book. And also at the end of the book he talks about how he thinks he has a mustache coming in. That's pretty cool. Mostly what we see in this book is a lot of social and emotional development. When the book starts out, this oldest brother, Byron, really rotten kid. He picks on, gotta go to my Byron page, he picks on the younger brother. Kenny notes that he picks on everyone and doesn't care about anyone, with the exception of the young sister they call Joey. Byron, he does all sorts of horrible things. You know, he picks on the younger brother, calls him an egghead, calls him clown, calls him punk. He, at one point, relaxes his hair, you know, even though his parents have told him no, he can't do it. I think it was kind of a peer pressure thing because his friend did it. So, you know, he wants to be cool like his friend, so he relaxes his hair. Funny story, his dad shaves it all off after that. You do see, like, fleeting instances of Byron being wanting to be a good person, doing the right thing in the midst of all these really horrific things that he does. At one point, he's throwing rocks at this bird, and, you know, he never thinks that he's going to hit it. Who does? It's like sitting on a power line. But he actually hits it, and it dies. Like, hits the ground stone dead. So, it's interesting. Byron actually gets really upset by this, and he starts crying. He buries it, like has a funeral for it. And Kenny, the middle kid, is really struck by this. You know, his brother wants to be all cool and throw rocks at a bird, but like when it actually gets hit and dies, he's really upset. And you see these mood swings in both of them, but mostly Byron throughout the book. Let's see here. Another really interesting thing is, I don't know if this is some oldest child syndrome. I'm sure I don't suffer from that. But in the book, Kenny talks about this one horrible kid at school who picks on everyone, and at one point steals Kenny's gloves. They're also kind of poor, so this is a really big deal. Steals Kenny's gloves and is like picking on all the kids. I don't know, it's like something about a wash. He's like shoving snow in these kids' faces. So Kenny tells Byron about it, and Byron comes down to the schoolyard and decides he's going to deal with things, and ends up beating up the bully. I don't know if he's like trying to do the right thing here, and he's just like horribly misguided. But he wants Kenny to stand up for himself. He doesn't want anyone to treat his little brother like that, except for himself, I guess. And just kind of interesting. They're stuck between, like, you know, being bad, horrible, you know, whatever, and then wanting to do the right thing, being idealistic or something. Let's see here. As far as like Kenny, the main character's emotional and social development, he's definitely at the age where he's getting embarrassed. He is embarrassed by the teachers who point out how smart he is. At one point, the teachers, you know, call him out of class and have him read to the class from this book, and, you know, the teachers just dote on him and, you know, brag about him to the whole class. See how smart Kenny is, and Kenny's completely embarrassed. He's worried that Byron's gonna pick on him for being so smart and, you know, whatever, but Byron actually doesn't, and he's very proud of Kenny, and Kenny's really excited by that. Kenny doesn't have a lot of friends. He attributes this to him being so smart, and to him having a lazy eye is something that he mentions really early on. He says that, you know, people pick on him for it, and occasionally Byron will make, you know, goofy faces at him to make fun of him for the for having a lazy eye. It was really nice though. You see a part in the book where Byron actually gives Kenny advice on how to deal with the lazy eye, kind of. He says, when you turn your head to the side when you're talking to people, you can't really see it, so just do that. And Kenny checks in the mirror to see how this looks, and he agrees, like, oh yeah, that looks a lot better. So that was kind of nice. Kenny's really excited one day when these new kids come to school. It's a brother and his younger brother, and I guess that they're from the South, and he's excited about these kids because he thinks that they're going to take some of the heat off of him as far as getting made fun of or picked on goes. This kid Rufus, they're really poor, way more poor than the Watson kids. He and his brother take turns wearing this like same two pairs of pants or something, and the kid has a drawl, like he says y'all, and Kenny knows that this kid's gonna get picked on more than him. Well, Kenny, feels badly for the kid, acknowledging his situation, that they're kind of poor, and shares his lunch with these boys. Ultimately, his mother realizes what's going on, and she starts packing extra sandwiches for the other boys at lunchtime. At one point, this kid is getting picked on, Rufus, and Kenny laughs, along with all the other kids, and Rufus gets really upset. He thought they were friends. What are you doing? And Rufus kind of gives him a dirty look and won't hang out with him anymore, and Kenny knows exactly what he's done. He feels really badly about it, and he tries to talk to Rufus. He goes over to their house one day, but they just won't hear it. They don't want to talk to him. And eventually, Kenny ends up breaking down and talking to his mom and, crying his eyes out, telling her how badly he feels. And I think it was after school one day, Kenny's mom corners Rufus and explains to Rufus, how badly Kenny feels, yada yada. Later that night, Rufus actually shows up at the house and asks Kenny if he wants to play. So that was really nice. Let's see here. Let's see. What else? When they are in, as far as like moral development, when they're in, let's see, in Birmingham, it's really interesting. Up until they get to Birmingham, Kenny had always kind of seen things in black and white. Like, you are always supposed to listen to your parents. He always does, what they tell him, even if it is begrudgingly. And he always acknowledges that um, Byron is not acting the way, he should be. He knows that Byron is being a bad influence on him, and he always, like, condemns Byron's hijinks. Um, but when they get to Birmingham, maybe you expect that the Byron kid would be the one acting out and being all crazy, but it's kind of not the case. Byron actually kind of shapes up just as soon as they land in Birmingham, and Kenny actually does something uncharacteristic, in disobeying his parents. They are warned not to go down to this one, it's like Collier's Point or something like that. It's named after Joe Collier. I guess that there's this area in like the river or lake or something that there's like a whirlpool, and they warn you not to go out there because it's dangerous, it'll suck you down. And I guess this Joe Collier's kid like died or something down there. I don't know if it's like owned by that guy or what, but this kid dies down there. Well, they get to go out one day, they're wandering around, and Kenny says, hey, let's go to Collier's Point. And strangely enough, Byron is the one who's like, no, like, we shouldn't go there, it's dangerous. And Joey, of course, she's like, what, 6 or 7, she only sees things in black and white and is like, no, we shouldn't go there. Let's see. He goes down to Collier's Point, and he's like nervous. Even, Byron and Joey said that they won't go with him, and and it's funny because he kind of acknowledges that I don't know, he just acknowledges that you kind of get into trouble in stages. It was funny. He said, you start out by doing something small, and then you justify it, and then you go on to do something else, and all of a sudden you're in a whole heap of trouble. So he goes on down to this point, and he sees this sign that says, warning, don't swim in here. And the sign actually says that 6 people have died. And so Kenny's kind of thinking about it for a second and decides that, oh, he's got it figured out. What's really going on here is that this Joe Collier guy doesn't want to share this fantastic, private swimming location with anyone else, when, no, that's clearly not what's happening. People have died here, but he's able to justify it, and he ends up going and swimming in there. And of course, he is chasing after fish in there and chasing after a turtle, and all of a sudden gets sucked down into a whirlpool. And it's really weird because they don't understand. Byron, I don't know if he was really just trying to like tell a story, or if they just don't really understand what a whirlpool is, but they call it a wool poo. And Byron tells Joey that it is like the evil cousin or something of Winnie the Pooh. I don't know, so weird. But Kenny thinks that the wool poo is actually like a person or an entity that's in the water or something, and it says that it starts to drag him down, it has hold of his ankle, that he can see its toes, and he's drowning. And it's interesting because Byron and Joey show up, and Byron jumps in the water to save him, which is a really interesting, like, development for Byron, who's been so mean and cruel to, risk his own life to jump in to save his brother. And he does. He drags him up out of the water onto the bank, throws him out, and is like trying to get all the water out of him, and does. And once, he realizes that Kenny's going to be okay, it says he's shaking like he was, hit with a bolt of electricity or something, and crying his eyes out. And it's just like amazing to see so much concern for his younger brother. And after they don't tell their parents about the whole Collier's Point thing, whatever. And after that, the church in Birmingham is bombed. And that morning, some neighbors had come to pick up Joey to go to Sunday school, and no one else went to church that day, I guess. So Kenny is still recovering from his ordeal with the wool poo, and is like really tired, so he's hanging out under a tree kind of napping when they hear this huge explosion. And they don't know what to be an explosion at the time. They couldn't figure it out, but they didn't really think it was too big of a deal. All of a sudden they find out the church has been bombed, and they're all worried that Joey has, been in the explosion. So they run down there, and there's smoke everywhere. Kenny says something like he thinks that he sees the wool poo in the church, like through the smoke and everything. The mom, the dad, and Byron don't go into the church, but Kenny does, and he's looking around, and there's just like rubble and craziness everywhere. He says that, people are coming out looking like their shirts have been painted red. I don't know that he realizes in that moment that it's blood. I don't know. He's kind of like looking around for his sister Joey, though, and he finds in the rubble, a black shoe like she had been wearing when she left the house that morning, and he pulls it off and realizes, like, oh, holy crap, that's attached to a person. Gets really upset, and he runs, away from the church and runs back all the way home, and he, like, hides in bed, trying to, I don't know, understand what he's seen, and he's just really upset by what he's seen. The grandma is hanging out around the house and doesn't know that anything has happened. All of a sudden, Joey comes into the room, and Kenny's really freaked out by this because she was supposed to be dead. And he kind of yells at her, like, you were supposed to be at church today, didn't you go? And she said yes, and, Joey thinks that he is messing with her, and, goes and gets the grandma, and the grandma's like, what is going on in here? And that's when the mom, the dad, and I guess Byron show back up and tell her, like, hey, there's been an explosion. Through all of this, Kenny is still holding this shoe, and, they tell the grandma what's going on. They're really thankful that Joey's okay. Apparently what happened is, like, Joey saw Kenny. She must have been, like, in town or across the street. I don't really understand. And followed him back to the house. I don't know. It's really weird. Follows him back to the house, which is why she stays safe and doesn't go into the church. So no one explains to Joey what has happened. She's definitely too young to understand. Even Kenny doesn't really understand what's happened. And basically it was like, I guess they think that two white guys drove past the church and threw a bomb in, or they, like, planted a bomb and that would detonate during service or something. So what's weird is they don't really discuss it, but they no longer plan to leave Byron there. That same night as the explosion, they all pack up and go back to Flint, Michigan. And they bring Byron with, and I don't really feel like that was ever really explained. I don't know, Byron, it seemed, did a lot of growing up while they were there. So they get back to Michigan, and Kenny is, like, really depressed about all of this, and he doesn't really understand it. I guess that at their house, whenever a pet, like a cat or a dog, is sick, they basically climb behind the couch, and like, they get better back there, or they don't, and they go to heaven. But it's referred to as, like, the Watson Family Pet Hospital or something behind the couch. And Kenny knows that, he's upset by what, like, he's seen, and he crawls behind the couch because he's hoping that whatever magical powers back there that heal the cats and dogs, like, will heal him. Kind of a weird way of thinking. I don't know. So he is back there. His parents can't ever hardly find him. But Byron figures it out, and he's just really upset. I mean, I guess he's depressed. He's really shocked. He can't really process, like, what he has seen in Birmingham, and he's, like, really internalizing it. He's not talking about it to anyone else. So it ends up happening that Byron is just, like, really nice to him, and even though Kenny's hiding behind the couch, being bummed and all that, Byron will sit on the couch and watch cartoons and ask Kenny if he needs anything to eat, and ask him, like, hey, well, why don't you just come sit on the couch to watch this one cartoon, and then you can go back to whatever. Which, again, is indicative of how, Byron has really grown up a lot. And it ends up happening that they're in the bathroom, Byron and Kenny, and Kenny ends up crying, just kind of, like, breaking about everything and telling Byron, how upset he is about, what he saw, and how he just doesn't understand why, people would kill people like that, and he realizes that he needs to stop crying or Byron's going to get mad or be mean to him or something, and Byron closes the door to the bathroom so no one else can see in, to, so Kenny won't get embarrassed, and tells him, cry it out, let's hear it. And Byron's really nice. He talks a lot of sense to Kenny and tells him, yeah, life isn't fair. It was wrong what they did. It's not your fault. Don't feel badly because you went back to the house, when the bombing happened. Like, you going back to the house saved, their sister. And, he's just really, really nice to Kenny about the whole thing. And that really helps Kenny. Kenny feels really good that, his brother is being so kind to him. And when they crack open the door of the bathroom to, go out, the parents and the sister are kind of crowding by the door, like trying to figure out what's going on. And the mom asks the older brother, is Kenny going to be okay? And Kenny says, well, yeah, he's related to me and I'm great, aren't I? Ridiculous. But, Kenny is really going to be okay. And, yeah. So it's just really interesting how you see them developing socially and emotionally throughout everything they go through, especially compared to where they started out at the beginning. By the end, Kenny sees things in more than black and white, and he's kind of like forming his own realizations about things that are going on around him and really paying attention. And Byron, is definitely growing in that, he's being more of an adult, taking some more responsibility, being kinder to those around him who need his help. And, yeah, interesting. So, yeah, I think that's about all. Okay, thanks.